Hi, this is Debbie with Impression 5 Science Center, and I'd like to welcome you to Sensory Friendly Science. This is our chance to get together and do a sensory friendly activity at a time when you're not able to come into the Science Center. And today, we're going to work with markers and talk a little bit about ink and how it's used in markers. A couple of sensory things. First, it's one of the things that makes this kind of a sensory friendly, sensory fun activity is we're going to be using some water, and we'll be playing with something in the water, so you'll want to be aware of that. That's usually fun sensory exploration. And for some of this, we are going to be using dry erase markers, and they do have an odor to them that some people dislike. So just be aware of that. And then the first thing I'm going to do is talk to you about markers and how they work. Most markers work about the same way. There's usually a cap, and under the cap you've got a felt tip to your marker. There's a plastic tube, and inside that tube is the cartridge that holds the ink to your marker that's usually felt as well. So then we had to get ink out of the marker and onto whatever we're writing on. And if the ink was super liquidy, when I'd make a mark on my page, it would drip off. If the ink was super dry, you wouldn't get very much of it out, which is kind of what's happening with my nearly dead marker here. So ink has to do something special. The pigments in ink are dissolved in a solvent. What the solvent is varies by what type of marker it is. But once it dissolves, that ink flows onto your piece of paper or whatever you're writing on, and that solvent dissolves and just leaves behind the bits of pigment for your ink. And we write on a piece of paper, and the solvent evaporates or absorbs into the paper, and the pigment stays on the paper. Paper is porous, meaning it has lots of tiny holes and it absorbs things. If I take my ceramic dish here, this is non-porous. By being non-porous, it means that things don't absorb into them. When you're writing on it, you're writing on top of the surface. And I have three types of markers. I'm going to make some lines to show you. I have my washable marker. I have my Sharpie type marker, and I have my vis-a-vis transparency type wet erase marker. So you can see I've got three lines on the bottom of my dish, and something kind of cool happens now. If I take water and I dump it in my container, I'm just going to dump it in, and then I'm going to dump it straight out so that I can show you what's in my container now. I had three lines in it, and now I only have one, because the Crayola washable marker and the vis-a-vis marker washed out with water. They have a water-based solvent. So when you put more water in, it dissolves the ink again. Sharpies do not have a water-based solvent. That's why Sharpies are much harder to get off of things. And if a Sharpie is on something that's non-porous, we can use something else. I have some rubbing alcohol here, and I'm going to dump it into this dish. And I'm going to pour that out again so you can see. It's not completely gone. There's still a little bit of that Sharpie left because it needs a little bit more rubbing to get it off. I can rub it off with a cloth now or a napkin, and it comes clean. But that's why Sharpies are much harder to remove from surfaces. None of these remove well from surfaces if they soak in, but Sharpies have an alcohol-based solvent in them. So now we're going to do something else cool. We're going to add to our discussion of these markers, we're going to add the dry erase markers. And dry erase markers do something cool. Instead of the solvent making them stick firmly to the ceramic, the solvent carries the ink, and the ink pigment pieces stick to each other, and they don't stick firmly to the surface that you write on. They actually hold on to that with an electrostatic charge. So basically static electricity holds them in place. So I'm going to take my three markers, and I'm going to, so you can tell them apart, I am going to write wash with the washable marker, and Sharpie with the Sharpie type marker, and dry with the dry erase marker. And now I'm going to adjust the camera so you can see what happens here. Okay, so here's my bowl, and there's my dry erase marker, my Sharpie, and my washable marker. And I have my water, and I'm going to pour it in over where there's not much writing. I'm going to take the lid off so it doesn't block your view so much. And something really cool happens. Two cool things happen. One, the washable goes away almost immediately, but the dry erase detaches. Because the dry erase ink sticks to other pieces of dry erase ink, it sticks to itself still and moves around and floats on top of the water. So let me show you something really cool you can do with that. And this is the part that you'll want to be able to do at home. What you will need is you'll need a container that has a ceramic type smooth surface. Ceramic like this works. Glass also works. You'll want to put something underneath it usually so you can see it well. I find that ones that have a very smooth bottom like this work better than ones like this that have been used a lot and have lots of scratches in them. And so you'll need a container like this, a dry erase marker, and some water. Okay, I'm going to make some designs in my large dish with my dry erase markers. And what you can do is you can play with what sort of dry erase marker and what sort of picture works best. Ones with skinny lines, or ones with fat lines, or ones that are big blobs. And some colors of marker and some brands of marker seem to work better than others at making things move around. And some of them keep their shape better, and some of them blurb around a bit once you get them going. And I'm going to make a I5 for impression 5, and I'm making a heart and a star and a dancing stick man and a blob. Now, these might not all work. Some of them might not work because they get caught on the places where there's scratches on my dish. And some of them, like I said, different markers work better. So I'm going to set the camera back up so you can see this as I put water in it. So here's my view of my artwork in my dish. And I'm going to pour my water over where there isn't any ink, and I'm going to pour just a tiny bit rather slowly. And you can see as they start moving around. And I have a straw right here, and I'm going to blow some wind and you can see how I blew them around there. If I take and I touch the surface of the water, I can make these move, and some of them will move towards or away. I can stir them around a little bit. I can make them crash, and some of them will get tangled in each other. And you can see that these red ones came off much easier than my black ones. For some reason with this brand of marker, the red ones come off better, but you can also see my dancing guy very much looks like he's dancing. And I have here a Q-tip with some soap. This Q-tip I dipped in some dish soap, and dish soap does something great. Dish soap breaks the tension on things with water because it repels a lot of things. It's one of the reasons you can put soap on something and make the dirt all go away. And it repels things floating on the surface of water. So I can, without touching these and without any wind, I can take this Q-tip with some soap and I can chase them all around the dish. And now my dancing man is thoroughly running away from my soap. And my star is too. It only works until you have too much soap in the water, and then it doesn't repel them much anymore, but it repels them in all sorts of neat ways. And you can take something like a toothpick and put it underneath them, and you can lift them up, but they start to bend as soon as you do that, so they turn into just a blob of ink on the end of my toothpick. We have also played with some pieces of paper, and let me move my heart here so you can see it better. And I have just a strip of paper right here, and I'm going to set it right on top of my heart. And guess what? My heart gets completely stuck to the paper. It's like an imprint now, and now it'll be just like I'd written on the paper with this piece of paper with that marker. So you can make designs that way too. You can save your artwork after you make a dance. It's not going to work so well on my stick man because he's a little tangled, but I can still collect him. He's just kind of blobby looking. So thank you for joining us for Sensory Friendly Science, and I hope we see you at Impression 5 Science Center soon.